Hello, everyone. Welcome back to TeaCup Entrepreneurs Tea Time Talk. And today with me, I'm your host, Steph Pellish. And today with me, I have Michelle Rothwell, who is a realtor. And I'm so excited to talk to her because not only is she a realtor, but she also has a background in advertising and marketing, which I can't wait to hear how that plays into real estate and her 28-year career as a realtor and how she helps to market, selling, as well as buying new homes for her clients. So, welcome, Michelle. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and we're just going to jump in with how
Yep.
did you become a realtor? What made you go down that path?
So I was in marketing and advertising for several years, and I did like that. It was kind of the same thing where I was, working for myself, commission based, things like that. So, um, but I wasn't loving it. I wasn't loving the whole. It was a lot of travel, and
Okay.
that got old real fast. I did a lot of hiring as well. So I was in hotel rooms a lot interviewing and along with selling and marketing and all that. So my parents moved from New York to Arizona, and they decided they had just taken early retirement and they decided to get their real estate license out in Arizona. And my dad said, I think you would really like real estate. I think you'd be really good at that. So I went, okay. He's always right. So, I listened to him and I went and got my license, and 28 years later, still at it.
You're still
So
at, so obviously it was something that you did like.
I did. I love it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing anything else. I mean, it's a lot of aggravation on a daily basis, a lot of stress.
The
But I
best
love it.
things are.
I have the best clients, I really love my clients, and that's the best part is with this job, with not a lot of jobs you can say there's an end point and you can see you bring people joy.
Yeah.
So I would say 99.9% of the time at a settlement table, everybody's happy.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you just brought up because you're right. Like, there aren't a whole lot of careers and jobs where you're working with people where there's like a solid, tangible
Right.
end point.
Yeah.
And like, you
Yeah.
know, you've completed the entire project, the entire
Yeah.
work because you've gotten to this point.
Yeah. And everybody's had it's a great feeling
Yeah.
that you helped somebody fulfill this dream of home ownership, which, it's great. It's,
Yeah.
to bring them to first time buyers are so much fun. They're, definitely have their own challenges, but moving into the first house is just so exciting.
Yeah,
So,
so kind of walk us through the process for me a little bit. So we've purchased two homes. We're in our
okay.
second home that we've purchased. Like, walk me through, or maybe someone who's never bought a home, what the process is with you, what it would look like if we were to ask you to be our realtor.
Okay.
What does that whole process from start to finish kind of look like?
So the very first thing I ask you to do is get pre-qualified.
Hmm.
I have an amazing mortgage broker. It's no cost, no obligation, but it's a perfect jumping off point because you think you know
Got to
what you
know
can
your numbers.
afford, but you can't, you really need to know your numbers, and because it's a sticker shock, like especially first time buyers, they don't understand the other costs that are involved
Yeah.
with the monthly payment, the taxes, insurance, if you have a homeowners association, there's a lot of other monthly fees that are included when they just go, oh, we can pay $2,500 a month. Well, that also varies from township to township, depending on taxes,
Well,
like,
and your utilities,
and
a lot of
utility.
people don't calculate those in
Yeah,
there.
I tell them, and even when you get pre-qualified, they'll tell you a very high number. And I always tell, because the mortgage company doesn't take into account that you'd like to eat and buy furniture. They don't look into
Okay,
that,
right.
they look into, yeah, you can afford that with your
If
car
you do
payment, your
nothing else.
student loans, and
Right.
if you never leave your house. Yeah. So I always say, they say you can afford that, but you don't want to go there. So I work numbers with them, back off of that and be like, this is, these are where your other bills are going to be. So take that into account that you're going to be comfortable. if, when you buy this house. So we start with that, with the pre-qualification, and that's sometimes shocking. Sometimes people have a pretty good idea. So we start with that. And then what I like to do, especially in this market, because it's so insane and you have to move so fast.
Hmm.
And again, for first time buyers especially, it's so hard. Like, you show them a house and you're like, okay, you have a half hour to look at this house. And then you either have to write an offer or no, it's gonna be gone. Like, no, you can't bring your parents back tomorrow. No, you can't think about it overnight. It's horrible. And
Yeah.
because I'm not pushy and I don't like to do that, but I tell them that's the way it is. And usually they have to lose a few houses before they really understand that you really do have to move that quickly.
Yeah.
Um, so to help with that, I'd like to have a meeting before we even look at houses, or, shortly after, where I just sit down with them and go over all the paperwork that's involved. We go over the agreement of sale and the buyer's financials and everything that's going to be included in writing up an agreement of sale.
Okay.
So we sit down and go over it so that when we have to write, I can docu-sign it to them. They're gonna know what they're signing. It's not gonna be as scary.
Yeah.
Is they'll have, we'll sit there for a couple hours and go over, answer all their questions and go line by line if they want, and give them the whole lowdown. And then send the whole packet home with them so they have a hard copy. So then if they have to sign on their phone, if you're working, I have a client who's a nurse and she works 12-hour shifts. So, like, she might not have time to read a full agreement of sale. She might just have to go on and sign, sign, sign.
Right.
But, she's gonna know what she's signing. It's not gonna
Right.
be anything she
You've
has to
already
have
gone through.
done. So that, I feel, gives them a good comfort level. And if the parents want to come to that meeting, sometimes, we want to sit with the whole family if they're deeply involved, and make sure everyone has a comfort level. Because it's your biggest financial investment of your entire life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's a lot. So you want to make sure everybody is on the same page and you're comfortable.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's where you're gonna live. It's where you're gonna spend all of your time.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and if you have a family, or if you want to have a family, that's where you're going to raise your family. And
right.
that was, I've joked with you a few times. My husband and I are terrible real estate clients because we like to look and look and look because we know what we want,
Mhm.
but we also want to see what's out there to see if we can make it work. And
Okay,
so when we bought this house, we looked for 2 years.
you're
And our
awesome.
realtor kept saying, you're going to love this neighborhood. You're going to love this neighborhood. But there was never anything here. So we kept looking all of these other places, because at the
Right,
time we had, was before I had my third, but then we were pregnant. We were like, we have no more space in this house. We need to
yeah,
move. And finally a house in our neighborhood came up for sale, and he and I drove in, and I was like, yep, this is the neighborhood. He's like, I know, I've been telling you. I'm like, well,
yeah,
it's not my fault that there weren't any
yeah,
houses. But then my husband this was 10 years ago. So we had time, and we
yeah,
both came and we looked at the house and we made an offer and all the things. But we're slow. We are not the type of people who, because we looked again recently in the past couple of years with the
yeah,
market being like it is, and we're not the kind of people who want to make a decision on our house
right,
that day. But we
yeah,
also know what we don't want, so we don't want
right,
to settle for something.
right,
And so
yeah.
how would you help us to do that without spending?
So that's okay. I mean, sometimes that's what we have to do. We have to spend a lot of time with some people. That's what they need. So if that's what you need to feel comfortable, then that's what I'll do. But it's good because you already know what you want and what you don't want.
Yeah.
So, like, if you wanted to see a house just to see it, but it had to have a basement and it doesn't have a basement, and you just say, I just want to see it, and I'd be like, I'll take you there, but you're killing me. Like, there's zero chance that you
Yeah.
want to buy this house because you have to have a basement and it doesn't have a basement.
Right.
So if we see this house and you don't want it, you have to tell me it's another reason then it doesn't have a basement, because we knew that before we went there.
Right. No, and we actually, when we just looked a few years ago, we saw a house that we loved, And online it looked great. When we went, it looked great, but the backyard was a main road
Yep.
and we just couldn't get over that. But had we
Yep.
not gone to see it, we wouldn't have known that that's what was there. And
So I
sometimes
do,
you do have to see
sometimes you have to
where it
see it,
is.
but I also, before I show houses, I Google map them. So
Yeah,
I would have emailed you and said, it's a great house. However, here's a snapshot. 313 runs right behind there. Are you
yeah,
okay with that? Just so you know.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
we kind of knew where it was, but once
okay.
we got there, it was like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah, that doesn't really work. And
yeah,
there was also a daycare like a half a block away that was so loud and all the kids were outside that had they not been outside, we never would have known. But because they were
right.
outside, I was like, I've got to listen to my own kids. When my own
Yeah,
kids are at school,
right.
I don't want to listen to daycare
Yeah,
kids like
exactly.
screaming and yelling. So yeah, there are a lot of factors sometimes that going to see a house can
Yeah. I
show
also
you, but
always tell my buyers when we're at a house, if they're not super familiar with the neighborhood, I say, go knock on the neighbor's door.
yeah.
Ask the neighbors. Neighbors love to talk about the other neighbors. They love nothing more than that.
Yes.
They will talk your ear off and go right down the road, because I can't talk about neighborhoods per se. Like I can't tell you, are there a lot of kids in the neighborhood? I'm not allowed to say that.
Okay.
There's a lot of, like, I'm allowed to talk about the house. I'm not allowed to talk about, people in the neighborhood or anything like that. Neighbors
Right.
can, neighbors will tell you all day
Right.
long about it. So I'm like, go talk to, and I just had one that just, she didn't get the house because she waited and didn't put the offer in time, but she was very nervous about a house across the street that was not in great shape. And I called the listing agent, and he assured me that it was fine, that, it wasn't a crack house, wasn't gang house, nothing like that. It just was messy people. But she was still, her and her dad were still, because it was a single girl, young, and I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what, the neighbor's home. I saw her just go into her house, go knock on her door. And the neighbor talked to her for a half hour and said, yes, they're lovely. They're just messy, but it's a lovely family. And she went right down the road, every single house, talked about every single person on the street and how lovely the street was.
No.
And then her and her dad were so relieved
Yeah,
that,
we didn't do that. We did drive through the neighborhood at
yep,
different times of the day just to
yep,
see like who was outside,
right,
check out the other houses,
yep,
cars, those kinds of
yes,
things just to
yep,
see. And like I said, when our realtor brought me here, I was like, yep, okay, just tell me which house is going to be ours. And
yep,
we actually saw three houses in here, but two were
okay,
did not like they were just too small. And then this is the house that
yeah.
needed some work,
Other
but
thing, if you find a neighborhood that you really like, then I'll send out mailings into the neighborhood and say, I have a buyer that loves your neighborhood, because a lot of times you get
yeah.
people that they want to move, but they don't want to go through the aggravation of listing it. They're not 100% sure. But if they have a buyer lined up, that
It
might
makes the
motivate
process a lot
them
easier.
and makes it a
Yeah.
lot easier to not have to go through all the other aggravation. So that does work wonderful. Yeah, again, especially in this market, I feel like there's not a lot of inventory on the market because people are kind of frozen like deer in headlights. Like, if we put our house on the market, where are we going to go? There's nothing on the market. So everyone's just frozen.
Yes, so that brings me to a question about like getting representation, right? Like having a realtor work with you. If you happen to reach out to the neighborhood, does it make sense for me to find my own realtor? Can I use you saying like that you've already got a buyer for the house? What should I just sell it myself? Like what's
Oh,
the
so if I sent you a postcard
Mhm.
saying I have a buyer, so that's up to you. I can do dual agency where I can represent both sides. If you don't feel like you need, I mean, everyone needs some sort of representation.
Okay.
So in that case, again, um, something like that, the seller, especially in this market, the seller is really in the driver's seat. So there's not a whole lot of negotiations going on. Pretty much you do what the seller wants, or there's 15 other people behind you that will. So Because usually I don't love doing dual agency. You're walking that line representing both.
Okay.
But for something like that, the seller says, yeah, I'll sell my house if I get this price. So then you tell the buyer, this is what they want. Are you willing to do that? And then we can negotiate a little bit and I can go back to them, well, they're willing to pay
Sure.
this, whatever. But
Sure.
I can work both sides. I don't love doing it if there's a lot of negotiations. It's hard to, you
Stay
really have,
neutral and
because then both people feel like, well, are they really working for me?
right.
They're
Yeah.
really working in my best, why they're working for both. But it is important to have your own representation, especially now, going to, like, say you go to an open house and you don't have an agent and you want to work with a listing agent. I would get my own agent.
Okay.
I would say, because again, then you're working with the listing agent. The listing agent represents the seller. So you're not getting full representation. And you need someone to advocate for you, to work in your best interest, I mean, you can do okay for both parties, but if you have your own representation, they're gonna dig deep and really
Right.
represent you and do everything in your best interest.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
No, I love that. What
yeah.
what would be your maybe top two or three tips for selling your house right now in this market? I know it's a seller's market,
It is
but
a seller's
but
market.
that doesn't mean that you don't have to do a little bit of work, I would
You
assume.
do, yeah, you do. I mean, again, it's super important to get the right agent
Mhm.
that's going to represent you and price your house correctly, because that is the biggest thing now is for sellers. Even though it's a seller's market, we're starting to see some price reductions
Okay.
because you're getting people or agents that are like, oh, well, the neighbor's house sold for 600, so I'm gonna list this for 600. Well, if they looked at the history of it and really looked into it, they would find out that they actually had it listed for 525 and it got bid up to 600. That doesn't necessarily mean your house is worth that. Um, because a lot of times you'll get 10, 15 offers on a house.
Mhm.
You'll get, the bulk of them are all similar. And then you'll get one maniac that has lost 10 houses and is going all in and is gonna go
They just
50,000
want the
over
house.
everybody else.
Yeah.
Over everybody
We
else.
we had a few houses in our neighborhood, that one house in particular that went
Yeah,
much higher than anything else and it was kind of crazy. And
yeah, and that was
no
one
other houses
person.
have been able to
No,
match it because
yeah,
it was at the peak of all of the chaos. But
yeah. Yeah, so you really have to, so when I would go to list a house, I would say you might be able to get 600, but I would still list it at 525 where they had it. That
yeah.
seems to be where the neighborhood is, like you look back at the list price for all the houses and not
Yeah.
necessarily, I mean, the sale prices will help you appraisal wise. You don't have to worry about your house appraising
Mhm.
because you have good comps, but appraisal comps and marketing, those are two kind of different things. So you
Yep.
really have to dive deep and know the neighborhood. It's important to get an agent that knows your neighborhood and is familiar with the area rather than, your cousin who's a part-time agent, a half hour away that's going to list it for a discount price. Well, you get what you pay for.
Mhm.
Basically, if you get a discount agent or you get somebody, a friend or someone that's not a full-time agent, you're going to end up losing in the end because they're gonna price that house at 600 and then it's gonna sit on the market and you're gonna do price reduction, price reduction, price reduction. You're gonna chase the market, you're never getting that again, and now you're gonna get 525. Where if you put it at 525 at the beginning,
Right.
you would
People
have
are going to start
600,
competing for it and maybe push it up.
right?
Interesting.
So,
Yeah, that's
yeah, so that
a great
covers
tip.
your commissions. Like you're going to make, hold, I'm sorry.
Dan.
Stop. Alexa was talking. So yeah, so you have to, it's getting an agent to represent you will pay for itself. You'll still make more with an agent, even though you're paying commission, you're going to net more, and your aggravation level is going to be considerably less.
Yes.
Because people
Yes.
have no idea what goes into it. They have no idea what we do,
Yeah,
besides.
I want to do the least amount as
Yeah,
possible. I want you to tell me what to sign, tell me what I'm
yeah,
signing, and that's
yeah,
what I want to do. I want to go look at the house,
yep,
make sure that it's the one for
yep,
me. And so, you've talked about we've talked about how it's a good time to sell your house because it's
yep.
a seller's market, but is it a good time to buy right now?
It is. So the rates just went down again today, and they're supposed to drop
Yeah.
again before the end of the year. But housing prices are going to continue to go up.
Okay.
So if it's a good time to buy, they say date the rate, marry the house. You can always refi, but the rates aren't going to drop. Like they're never going back down to 2 or 3 where they were before. They're down to 6. They're going to go into the mid fives, maybe. They're not going to go significantly lower than that. And the housing prices are going to continue to go up. So if you have a house at 450 at 6% today, and you want to wait till it goes to 5.5% in the spring, you're going to be paying $50,000 more for the house. Spring market is more competitive. It might even be more than that. Your monthly payment is going to be the same, if not more.
Okay.
So it's always a good time to buy now, no matter what the rate is, because you can always refi.
Yeah.
But most likely, the housing prices today are the lowest that they're going to be. They're most likely not going to drop off.
Yeah.
They're going to level off. They're not going to go in the leaps and bounds that they have in the prior years, but they're going to always edge up a little bit. Real estate is always a great investment, and it's always a good time to buy. I mean, rather than, especially if you're a first time buyer, if you're renting, you're throwing that money away. You're paying your landlord's mortgage. You're getting nothing. So you might as well, and a lot of times now rents are crazy high.
Yeah.
So mortgage payments a lot of times are less than rent payments. And you're gaining equity, and you'll always get equity in your house. So
Yeah. Yeah. But you also then have to deal with all the nonsense that comes
yeah,
with owning a house too,
yes,
though.
you do have maintenance and upkeep.
I say we're now in our house 10 years and we still have some projects that we never did, but now we're redoing some projects that we
Yes,
had to do when we first moved in. So
yes.
there are days where I'm like, man, if we rented or if we had like an HOA that took care of all of this, it might be nice. But it also means that we get to do the things that we want to do
Right,
in the order that we want to do them. And
yeah,
there are obviously
yeah.
many benefits to owning our home.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you're renting, if you're not in a complex and you're in a house or privately owned something, those people might sell and then you have to move,
Yeah. Yeah,
find
you don't
something
have
else.
control
You
over
don't have
that.
control, so you
Absolutely.
might have this lovely house and then you have to move every few years when they decide to sell it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, nobody wants to do that.
So how do you, I know you have a marketing and advertising background.
Yeah.
How do you bring that into real estate?
So that's
Or do you? I mean, I'm
I do, yeah, as far as how to market. I have a company that does most of my marketing and my social media and things like that, but it's really important to have branding and a name in your area. So like people know that you come to mind immediately. If
Mhm.
someone wants to buy or sell a house, like especially in my neighborhood, I market my neighborhood really hard, and anybody knows they can call me, ask me questions, even if they're not ready to move.
Yep.
So marketing, advertising, and once you list a house, you have to know where it is to post it. Again, seller's market, it's not as difficult, but that's going to change just like it always does. And then you really have to know where the sweet spots are to post it so that the most people that are interested in it will see it. It's not
Right.
necessarily that the most people see it, but the people that will actually want to buy the house will
Right.
see it.
Your target market is seeing.
Yeah, you have to know your target market.
Yeah, so that's a leads me to my next question. Where is your target market? Where do you help people buy and sell?
My comfort level where I am is I live in Montgomery Township and my office is in Chalfont. So that general area, Horsham, Doylestown, Warrington, um, over to Skipback, kind of a 10-mile radius around here.
Okay.
I go further. I've been in Bridgeport and Phoenixville a lot these past couple weeks with a buyer. But for the most part, I'm in kind of the central Montgomery Bucks,
Okay.
Central Bucks, North Penn, Methacton, Wissahickon, Bluebell,
Yeah.
those
Great
areas.
areas.
Yeah, all great areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's easy to
All the
sell.
areas we were
Great areas.
circling both times we were looking for homes. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all great areas, so.
And so if somebody wanted to find you, where would they find you? On social media,
Oh
on,
yeah, I'm all over social media. You can Google Michelle Rothwell, Mish Roth Realtor on Instagram, Michelle Rothwell Realtor on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, everywhere.
all
But
right,
if you just
well,
put in Michelle Rothwell Realtor, you should be able to find me.
and we will make sure that we link all of that in our show notes so that people
Thank
can
you.
find you and use you to buy and sell their home with
That would
someone
be
who's
great.
got a lot of experience and
Yes.
really is it just sounds like you're so invested in the whole process. Like I just want to say like how I think important that is and maybe it's because the market has changed, but I feel like as a buyer I would really benefit from those things that you talked about, like sitting down, having all the paperwork ready so that if we do decide, it's
Right.
like, okay, now we have to go through all of this process. Like we need to do it. Like it's 10 o'clock at night. Well, now I
Right.
have to call my realtor and say yes. And it needs to be done by like 10:30.
Right.
Like it's like, nope. All right, we made our decision. Now let's
Yeah.
go. Or here are
Yeah.
the things that you said you wanted. This house doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about like, are you
Yeah.
sure?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I'm
maybe.
really deep with my clients. I mean,
Yeah.
we are connected all the time, like always text. I mean, it's not good, but my boundaries are not great. So,
We'll work on your boundaries, but also I'm sure that your clients greatly appreciate your
yeah,
attention and your work with them. So
thank you.
thank you so much for being here today and for
Yeah,
chatting with us. And if anybody wants to find Michelle and is interested in buying or selling their home, please reach out to her. And we will talk to you next time here at
great.
Tea Time with our Teacup entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Steph.